Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome back to Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add vintage vibes to your modern life. We're your hosts, Jackie
and Gonzalo. Thank you for joining us today. So we are going to be talking today about a topic that is, in a way, new to me, but Jackie knows and loves, and that is Mad Men. And after Jackie tells us a little bit about the show, we will do a scene-by-scene of the first episode. But before we get to that, Jackie, how's your week?
My week was good, so I saved my food chat for this week because last week we did so much on Argentinian food,
Mm-hmm.
but one of my favorite meals to cook of the year just happened with St. Patrick's Day. And I usually make a whole big deal out of it. I'm not Irish. Boyfriend's like part Irish, but he's mostly just like a European mix. So he's got like just as much of all the other things.
I've got Irish in me.
Yay, good for you. See, well, everyone's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. So I just like cooking to a theme. And I only make corned beef once a year. So I look forward to it all year round. And it's just like corned beef day. Like that's what it feels like. Though upon reflection, I was wondering, because they only sell pre-corned corned beef brisket at St. Patrick's Day times, but we live in Texas. I can get brisket. I could walk down the street and get a brisket. Maybe I could pickle it myself?
Yeah?
So that might be a fun experiment if I'm craving corned beef in 6 months or something. And
I was going to say that would be a fun summertime.
Right? Yeah, because it's delicious, and I usually make it in the crock pot, which means it would be perfect for summer. A lot of people think that crock pot season is soup season because people make a lot of soup in crock pots. I think August is crock pot season because I am not turning the oven on or standing in front of a stove. So
I don't like using a crock pot, so...
Why?
I don't like my electric equipment being plugged in. No, let me rephrase that. I'm not crazy. I don't like unplug the TV. Like when I'm not using it. But
Sure.
I don't like leaving an appliance on. Like I will turn back if I think I left the coffee maker on.
No, yeah, that
So-
I totally, that's really fair. And I know that's technically what they're made for, but I don't really trust them meaning crock pots alone in my house either. But I do love it as if I'm also home, like dinner's cooking itself over there and I can just go do other things.
Yeah.
So I only made one vintage recipe this time. Usually I try to fold in some sort of like vintage potato something, but I really just decided to just make all of my favorite modern recipes for St. Patrick's Day. So I did that. But my vintage recipe was a overly complicated Irish coffee pie. And I say overly complicated because there were so many steps. And the thing is, I don't know enough about baking to know if all of them were entirely necessary or not, but it seemed like a lot. So it's like a whole packet of gelatin, and you like heat that up with an egg yolk, and then you reserve the egg white and you whip that to stiff peaks. Meanwhile, you also make whipped cream and you put instant coffee in the whipped cream, and then you cool down the gelatin by setting your saucepan in an ice bath, and then you whisk in some whiskey, and then you fold in your whipped egg white and the whipped cream, and then you put that in a pie shell, which you had to have baked like the day before.
Wow, that's been very involved, but it sounds delicious.
It was delicious, and the thing is, all of that effort, and I honestly think I'd do it again. Like, it was so good. But I just was sitting there, like, I had, like, so many things. So I had, like, a bowl with my egg white, a bowl with the whipped cream, a bowl with the ice water, and, like, my skillet over, my saucepan over here doing the gelatin thing. And I'm just like, why am I using 4 vessels to make a pie? Like, this is crazy. Like, I was like... Anyway, maybe that's how much effort people put into pie normally, and I just don't bake enough. And is that how everyone makes pie? Does it require all of the bowls? Listeners, let me know if you always use 4 bowls to make pie. Anyway, that was my food talk. Are you ready for your food talk?
I am.
You look so excited.
So I also made on St. Patrick's Day a Irish meal, and not like, yes, it was on I made an Irish meal on purpose because of it, but also I had just been shared that a few days before this recipe, and I didn't realize it was Irish when I saw the Instagram post, but it was very Irish, and it was great. And I don't think I can eat mashed potatoes regularly ever again, because what I made was colcanan, which is basically mashed potatoes folded in to like leeks and kale and cabbage and heavy cream and butter. And I'm talking, I
So much
used most of the stick of Kelly Gold, which I used because it's Irish.
fun.
Because usually that's like the fancy, like I'm putting this on toast, and then regular Falfurious is the regular butter that I use for like cooking. Because I've got butters for different
Occasions.
tasks.
No, I also splurged for Kerrygold for St. Patrick's Day specifically.
Yeah. But it was so good. And then the rest of the week, I had leftovers
Yeah.
because I didn't plan the fact that I was making dinner for just 2 people. So I made my entire Le Creuset full of mashed potatoes. Like it was like overflowing.
Nice.
Also because the ingredients list are like 2 Yukon potatoes and 3 blah 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 potatoes. And I'm at the store and I'm thinking, surely this is not going to be enough food. And boy, was I wrong.
Did you double the recipe, or it turned out huge? I
I just added some extra. I don't like following recipes really.
Oh boy.
I just kind of like they're like a guideline of an outline of guidelines. There you go. That's what a recipe is to me. So like I was like, sure, I can add an extra potato or 2.
If it's more like guidelines, next time you make it, add bacon.
Ooh, that actually would be good.
It's so good.
Yeah. I had the last of the leftover Kalkanen today with breakfast. I heated it up on the skillet so that it got a little brown on the bottom. And then I
Nice.
did 3 fried eggs because apparently I eat breakfast in the 50s.
Yeah.
And put them on top. So whenever I was cutting the eggs, like the yolk would run into the mashed potatoes.
Love that. I love a runny egg on something.
And now I'm hungry again.
Yeah.
But you know what would keep me from being hungry, because they're an appetite suppressor? Cigarettes.
Cigarettes.
And that will play a part today in our episode.
Yes. So the time has finally come, listeners. We're talking about Mad Men on the pod. I know technically it's not a mid-century thing because it is a TV show from the 2000s, but it is pretty accurate historically and is maybe the reason that I make all of my aesthetic decisions in life.
It's not maybe, it is the reason.
So this is possibly the greatest show of all time. I'm just going to say it is the best written, highest researched television drama. I will go to bat for it. I honestly think it's just perfect. It is perfect. Including the garbage Diana plotline in season 7, which we'll get to maybe in 7 years. But Mad Men is my favorite show of all time for sure. Gonzalo went through the trouble of copy pasting some summaries and production stats for me here in this intro. But before we get to the technical details, Gonzalo, you have never seen an episode of Mad Men until yesterday, right?
Correct. I know it's a show about an ad agency in the mid-century, and so I'm sure there's going to be office, and there's also going to be personal relationship drama, and I'm sure there's going to be some overlapping of the two.
Yes, and not just personal and relationship drama, but also political drama and culture drama, because it's the 60s. This show starts in 1960 and it ends in 1969, and a lot of stuff happens in history during that time period, and all of the actors go through it, or the characters go through it. You see how society changes from the early 60s, which still had a lot of 1950s sensibilities in it, to late 60s. We're looking at the 70s. We've got women's lib. We've got stockings that go up to your belly button instead of wearing garter belts. Like, men are wearing belts instead of suspenders. It's chaos. Like, there's just there's fashion transitions. There's, like, social transition. Like, the whole thing. It's great. The 60s were fascinating. This TV show is really well written. You come for the aesthetic and you stay for the drama. So I guess we can get to the details now that I've gushed for a little bit. Let's just talk about some serious stuff. So Mad Men was an American period drama television series created by Matt Weiner and produced by Lionsgate Television. It ran on cable network AMC from July 19th, 2007 to May 17th, 2015, with 7 seasons and 92 episodes. It was set during the period of March 1960 to November 1970. I didn't realize we actually made it to 1970. I really thought that they bailed before then, but whoops. So
We can
maybe
cut
I'll learn some things too.
it out.
So it has a lot of actors. There are a lot of characters. Four of the main characters are John Hamm as Don Draper, an advertising executive in Manhattan, Elizabeth Moss as Peggy Olson, Don's secretary at first, Vincent Kartheiser as Pete Campbell, a younger advertising executive in Manhattan, and the only character I don't like, and Christina Hendricks as Joan Holloway, office manager at the advertising firm. Actually, Pete is like, he has a very interesting character arc, but I just like, he annoys me so much. It's like for like honestly 6 of the seasons. I
I
just
can
like,
see that because he was annoying.
yeah.
But also, it was incredibly difficult to research this part of our episode without
Spoiling it.
spoiling the show because I'd never seen the show. So I was like looking, and a couple of things in the description of characters specifically, I did find out a couple of things. But as I was reading, I was looking for very specific things to put in this intro. So I was skimming like crazy. I was like, no, scroll.
Yeah, that, and also it doesn't help that for fans of Mad Men and of our podcast, I covered the series finale a little bit.
Yes,
in our
but in my mind,
Mhm.
I don't remember the details.
Good.
So don't bring it up.
Yeah. And we did include spoiler alerts for any time I actually talked about the show in there.
Yes, it's a lot of times I put my fingers in my ear.
Yes. But now that you're actually watching it, we can talk about that again. We should do like a revisited version of this if we ever get to the end of the show.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm kind of implying here is that we'd love to make this a series, like a regular thing where we maybe once a month do a scene by scene recap of Mad Men. We'll start with the pilot today and just kind of fold it in as a great excuse to get Gonzalo to watch this show so that we can talk about it. So if you guys would be into that, please let us know. If you are into that so much that you want us to do 2 episodes a month, also let us know. Happy
Yeah.
to do it if this is what you guys are into. But in the meantime, let's just do a little bit more about production before we get into the actual pilot episode. So the pilot was shot in New York, but the rest of the show was actually filmed in LA. Each episode had a budget between $2 to $2.5 million, and the pilot episode's budget was over $3 million. The creators did some serious research to make sure the show was true to its time period and draws inspiration from directors such as Alfred Hitchcock and Wong Kar-wai, as well as many mid-century TV shows like MASH and Happy Days. Director Alan Taylor, who directed the pilot, shows most of Don Draper's scenes from behind to maintain a sense of mystery about him. Also, many of the scenes shot at Sterling Cooper, the advertising firm, were shot on a lower than eye line to incorporate the ceilings into the composition of the frame, reflecting the photography, graphic design, and architecture of the period. You can stream the show on AMC Plus, which does require a subscription, but you can also stream it on Amazon Prime if you have the AMC add-on subscription, which you can buy digitally from there. And it was released to DVD, so if you're stuck in the 2010s, you can purchase the disc set. You can also buy it on Apple digitally, which is what I did. It is, when I did it anyway, it was $35, and you get the bonus features.
So I bought it on Amazon Prime. I bought the first season. So we're stuck. I had to watch the whole first season.
You have to watch the whole first season.
And it was on sale for $5.99.
Nice.
The show has won several awards. It's received widespread acclaim for its writing, acting, visual style, and historical authenticity. Although, in a few minutes when we talk about scene by scene, there are some historical inaccuracies if you look for them. The show was also nominated for many awards and even won 16 Emmys and 5 Golden Globes. It was the first basic cable series to receive the Emmy for Outstanding Drama Series, which it won for 4 years straight between 2008 and 2011. And it is regarded as one of the greatest television series of all times.
By everyone, not just me.
Yes. It's also received many rankings. Season 1 received the lowest score on Rotten Tomatoes at an 85%. So that's what they consider low. So it's pretty good. The rest of the seasons all received over 95%, with season 2 receiving a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the last season receiving 90%. Metacritic gave it a score higher than 85 for all seasons, except for the first, which received a 77. And the American Film Institute selected it as one of the top 10 television programs each year that it aired. And now that we know a little bit about the show, we want to do the first episode as a scene by scene. And hopefully you guys have already seen it. If not, pause the podcast and come back.
Yes, so that was our spoiler-free talk. We're going to be full spoilers going through the whole episode scene by scene now, so if you have not seen it yet, you can stop listening here and go watch it and come back. Or,
Yes.
if you love spoilers, let's get into the show.
Yes.
So, episode 1, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. The original release date was 19th of July 2007 on AMC. Written by creator Matthew Weiner and directed by Alan Taylor. According to the Nielsen Media Research, the episode attained a rating of 1.4, which is 1.2 million households upon initial airing.
Yes. So let's get started. The show starts with this intro, which is very interesting, and it kind of makes me think of James Bond intro songs. It's like a cartoon, black and white suit guy falling through ads, and there's really cool music in the background. And then a little card with some delightful mid-century quartet-style singing appears, and that title card says "Mad Men," a term coined in the late 1950s to describe the advertising executives of Madison Avenue. They coined it. In scene 1, when it starts, we are in some sort of bar or restaurant, and we're introduced to John Hamm, but do not yet know his name. Although, with this show being almost 20 years old now, we do know that it's Don Draper. And in the background, we have Band of Gold by Don Cherry playing. Don starts off a conversation with the black waiter at the bar he's sitting about cigarettes, and the manager immediately comes over and asks Don if the waiter is bothering him. And it seems like Don's maybe not so prejudiced because of the way he tells the manager to get lost so that he can continue this conversation. We also see Don taking notes on cocktail napkins. A lot of creative people in the 1960s took notes on creative napkins.
Yes, I think we mentioned
Not
it a
creative
little
napkins,
bit.
cocktail napkins.
Yes, in at least our Disney episodes about Imagineers drawing out ideas for like the Haunted Mansion and everything on cocktail napkins.
Yeah. I wish I had like, I don't know. If I'm at a bar, I'm not thinking about work. Also, I guess I'm not gonna sit there at a bar and like do lesson planning on cocktail napkins. But anyway, looking around the scene, it's all cigarettes. It's all music. The outfits really put you immediately into the 1960s. The server lights Don's cigarette inside, which is something that does not happen in 2025 because you cannot smoke inside. The only bar I can think of where you can do that here is Einstein's Pub, which, Jackie, I don't know if you remember, but as far as I know, now it's been several years since I've been there, but you can still smoke cigarettes inside.
Yeah, I think there's like 1 or 2 places here where you can still smoke inside, but there's nothing like that aesthetic. I didn't even put this in here, but it's worth mentioning. So they filmed this show on film because digital cameras don't capture smoke realistically enough. A lot of every time you're watching modern things that are shot digitally, they're actually putting in the smoke in post.
Huh.
If you want to actually see smoke be smoke, you need to be on film. And also, they needed real smoke coming out of their cigarettes, so they're not smoking real cigarettes, but they're smoking these herbal cigarettes, which are tobacco and nicotine free, but they smoke and burn like real cigarettes. John Hamm said in an interview once that they taste like a mixture between pot and soap.
Interesting. That sounds
So
gross.
that sounds... they look great, but yeah, they were probably really gross. And every character smokes.
Every character smokes. So there's a discussion between Don and his waiter, between Old Golds and Luckies. Now John smokes Luckies. I'm gonna call him Don. We're gonna call him John and Don interchangeably throughout the episode.
Fair.
But Don smokes Lucky Strikes, and this conversation about smoking, where John takes, geez, I did it again. When Don takes inspiration from the server who says, "I love smoking," and he writes it down. What's this for? What's going on? Right. Also, Don orders an old fashioned.
I think it's hard to call him because technically we don't know his name yet.
That's why I keep calling him John in this scene.
Yeah, so John Hamm orders an old fashioned,
which automatically puts him in the right camp for me.
Mm-hmm.
So after an abrupt cut, we move on to the next scene, and we are now with Don knocking on someone's door. And here we meet Midge, a bohemian illustrator who openly rejects the traditional ideals of marriage and domestic life. Her apartment has some great mid-century furniture in it, particularly a small table and lamp at the end of the bed and a record player in the background. Also a really great drawing table. Anyway, Don is worried about a cigarette account because of some recent reports that are putting out that all cigarette companies are in a panic. Jackie did in fact check this, and it looks like they got the timeline wrong, and they are referring to this from the CDC. So, quote, on January 11th, 1964, Luther L. Terry, MD, Surgeon General of the U.S. Public Health Service, released the first report of the Surgeon General's Advisory Committee on Smoking and Health. On the basis of more than 7,000 articles relating to smoking and disease already available at the time in the biomedical literature, the Advisory Committee concluded that cigarette smoking is a cause of lung cancer and laryngeal cancer in men, a probable cause of lung cancer in women, and the most important cause of chronic bronchitis, end quote.
The way they're freaking out in the show makes me think that this is probably what they're talking about, like the official ruling from the Surgeon General, but
Yes.
that was in 1964. But it does make for a very interesting first plot point.
Yes.
Like seeing an advertising agency struggle with this marketing problem.
Yes,
So
yes, yes, yes.
I see why they wanted to start off with this, but whoopsies.
Yes, it makes very interesting plot points. So Midge reveals the main character's name, saying something like, "Is this when I see Don Draper is the world's best ad man?" Or something. I didn't write down the quote exactly. So we learn his name is Don and that he's in advertising, essentially. After some private time off screen, a fate transition reveals Don and Midge in bed, and more smoking.
More smoking.
Like, lots of smoking in the mid-century.
Yep.
Dawn suggests marriage. Midge says that she'll make a good ex-wife, but she does not, quote, make plans or breakfast, and then kicks him out, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, I thought she's entertaining.
Yes. That's another remark that people love smoking. This time comes from Midge.
Mm-hmm.
We have an awesome transition with piano music into an office building, and this transition scene is great because it showcases many people, okay, mostly men, heading into what seems to be an office building. Like you see them walking in through the little rotating door, and it's a great showcase of 1960s fashion, which if you guys want to know more about, we will include our episode of 1960s fashion in our show notes.
Yes.
And everyone's wearing hats.
Everybody.
Yes, I love it. And there's even an elevator scene with an elevator assistant. And almost immediately, we see three guys being gross in the elevator. They are talking about women and their feelings in a very non-HR approved, at least at 2025 standards, fashion. Anyway, we meet Paul, Ken, and Harry in the elevator, a bunch of babies who still have college/frat boy attitudes.
Yeah, that was me. I added some of my colorful commentary to the script, by the way.
That's
so
fine.
anytime you see something that sounds biased towards or against any character, it's probably me inserting my feelings.
As they exit the elevator, they head to someone's office. Presumably, his secretary asks if he's expecting them, and the response is very mind your own business. Like, we got this. Yeah, here we meet Pete Campbell. Yeah.
So we learn right away that Pete is getting married, and he picks up a picture, and he sounds very romantic about, like, he seems really happy too. So he picks up a picture of his wife and looks at it, and they actually hadn't cast who ends up playing his wife yet. So I think I read somewhere, I swear, that it was actually a picture of Matt Weiner's mother, like from the 60s, that he picks up in the scene. But they do eventually replace it with a photo of the actual actress once she's cast.
Nice. He is on the phone, we presume, with his fiancée, and he tells his fiancée to not worry about him being late, and then proceeds to tell her to just go shopping. Hang out with your mother. Anyway, welcome to Sterling Cooper, the advertising firm where most of the show is set.
Mm-hmm.
We've already covered this a little bit, but the pilot episode was shot at Silver Cup Studios in New York City and various locations around the city. But this is the only episode we filmed in New York. The rest of the show is in LA, and you will see some differences in office set moving forward.
They do a pretty good job rebuilding it, but if you pay attention to that sort of thing, you do notice where some things are in different spots.
Yeah. So the scene transitions into two ladies walking through the crowded office. And here we meet one more secretary, Joan Holloway.
My favorite character, who's actually office manager, not a secretary.
Yes. She's introducing a new secretary, which we don't know her name yet in the scene, but this is Peggy Olson, fresh from Miss Deaver's secretarial school and ready to learn. To the office, and then says something interesting that just reminds me of how to succeed in business without really trying, which says, of course, if you do well, you'll be in the country when you won't be working at all. Also,
I'm glad that you mentioned how to succeed in business, because you should keep that in mind as we meet some more characters in future episodes.
Good. Okay. I feel like this is a bit of a stab at a trope that in the mid-century was not uncommon for young executives to take a secretary or a lady working in his office as either wife or mistress.
Yeah, it's heavily implied. Well, not implied. She flat out says, if you're doing well here, you actually would be in the country and not working, is that people all went to college and got jobs specifically just to meet a husband. Yeah. That was a thing.
Joan tells her, quote, they say they want a secretary, but most of the time they are looking for something between a mother and a waitress, end quote.
Which I think is also a really fun summary of what the
Yeah.
job of a secretary would be back then.
She also tells the new secretary to be prepared, essentially says she will be, quote, taking care of Mr. Draper. And her advice really is to not overdo it with perfume and keep a fifth of something in her desk, telling her that Dawn drinks rye, and to also keep some aspirin and band-aids handy. Also in the background, there's a great looking old fan. If you don't really see these much around, but it alludes to a time where there was no AC, or at least no good AC in an office building, which is very mid-century.
That's a good point.
And it is a giant metal fan, and it's got a cage around it, but it's not exactly a fan that would be approved in the workplace today. It looks like if you just look at it wrong, the blades will cut you. Okay, so there's a great scene here where Peggy is introduced to her workstation, and her workstation has an IBM typewriter with a cover and everything, which I thought was hilarious. A black rotary phone, a glass ashtray, and an intercom system reminiscent of Charlie's Angels. And this IBM typewriter is a Selectric 2, which is a portmanteau of selective and electric. And it's a pretty awesome electric typewriter that instead of using individual type bars that swing up to strike the ribbon in a page, like a typical mechanical typewriter would, this electric had this really interesting chrome plastic ball that rotated, and it's called the element, frequently called the type ball, or less formally the golf ball, because it looks a little bit like a golf ball, that rotated and pivoted to the correct position before striking the paper. And this is how do we get the letters into the paper. Not to get too technical here, but the big difference is that in a traditional mechanical typewriter, the letters don't move. The paper moves, and the letters always strike in the center. The paper moves only up and down, and the ball with the type is the one that moves around.
Very cool.
This prop actually was eventually auctioned off after the show ended.
A lot of them were. I don't have any of them, but some people in my Mad Men Facebook groups were like, oh yeah, I have this brooch that Joan wore in season 2, episode 4, and it comes with like an authenticity card. They auctioned off a lot of the stuff.
I won this electric too. Here's where we also encounter a timeline error. This electric 2 was introduced in 1971, yet the show is set in early to the mid 1960s, so some prop master here did not do his or her research. And sorry, that's a little bit of as a past theater kid. Hello.
Yeah, I know.
Joan also says something that's very interesting here. She says, the man who designed it made it simple enough for a woman to use.
Yeah, it was right after she says something like, now don't be overwhelmed by this extreme technology. Like,
Yeah.
and she unveils an electric typewriter, which is just like, I think that was just for the audience, honestly.
Yeah. The next scene is set in Don Draper's office, a corner office, so he must be important. The door is plain office gray, as I call it, and has his name in small black type on it. The walls to the office are frosted glass that look right out of like a residential shower. Interestingly, the camera as the scene starts seems to be set on Don's desk, looking at the two men as they enter, and right front and center is, you guessed it, an ashtray.
And here we meet Roger, who is also known around the fans of the show as Silver Fox.
So we get even more historical context here in the conversation about not having any Jewish people at the company. Quote, most of the Jewish guys work for Jewish firms selling Jewish products to Jewish people. Things are still very segregated in this time period. I found it funny that, or interesting, I guess, that when asked if they've hired any Jews, Don's reply is, quote, not on my watch. So he's not prejudiced against black servers, but he is against Jews.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
In this scene, we also get some great mid-century furniture. Something about the mid-century and big, bulky furniture with small, spindly legs that taper down at the bottom. It's like Mitch's desk. Mitch's table in her apartment also had the same legs. Unfortunately, we do not see any Eames or Barcelona chairs yet, because we will see Eames chairs in this episode. This one is set up with 3 different decanters, presumably with rye in them, a tray with glasses, an ice bucket, and what looks like a shaker. Another indication of the mid-century drinking at work, which I used to do. That sounds bad. When I worked in an office, we had events in the office, and a lot of times they were like right after 5:00, and most people would like go to the main room and like have like a drink, or around Christmas, like people walk around at after 5 with like a bottle of wine and like, you want some more wine? It was when I imposed my self rule of not drinking at my desk, because I always kept I just kept knocking my glasses over, so I would end up with like red wine over my white desk. But anyway,
Wow.
Don here is smoking. He puts away a Purple Heart, so we get a bit of character backstory before he starts playing with some sort of antique resistance band thing.
Yeah, that what is that? Is that a resistance band?
It's a resistance band. Yeah, I
Yeah,
used
that's
to have
what I
one.
thought. But it's like springs.
Yeah,
with
I totally
hands.
had one.
Wow. So they still
Yeah.
make them, or is it like your
No.
parents'?
Mine. It's in a box from the 70s.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in my parents' house. Anyway, the box says Lieutenant Donald Francis Draper. We also meet Sal Romano, who Jackie?
Yeah, so I think it's clear immediately when he walks into the scene that he's gay. But in case you were on the fence, they give him this line. People are living one way and secretly think the exact opposite. That's ridiculous.
Yes. He also has another great line. Should we drink before the meeting or after or both? So we also are introduced to a doctor, scary German research lady. So the public is aware of the poison of cigarettes, right? So like we already knew that in the mid-century. Why did it take so long to get rid of them?
Yeah, people love smoking.
That's true. People love smoking. Don is dismissive of psychology, saying not why should people smoke, but why should people smoke Lucky Strike. Don takes a medical report from the scary German doctor and proceeds to just throw it away, which comes in handy later. He also takes a nap, and you can hear the sounds of war in the background before Peggy wakes him up and gives him some aspirin. He seems too young to have been in World War II, so we're probably talking about Vietnam or Korea here, is my thoughts, because both wars were fought in the mid-century, and I wonder if we'll find out at some point.
We sure might.
Don't tell me now. Shh.
Yep, we sure might find out.
Also, here we see Peggy's whole outfit.
Yes, so actually everyone makes fun of Peggy for this outfit, but I think it's a very practical first day at work outfit. From the episode, we did actually first day at work etiquette before, and they talk about how to like dress so that you don't stand out specifically, but she's wearing this like semi-cropped, like it kind of goes to like just above her hips, mustard sweater with like a really cool collar and a grayish taupe circle skirt and black pumps. And I actually have a mustard sweater that is about as long as that one, and every time I wear that sweater, I wear it outside of my skirt. Like it's not tucked into her skirt. It's outside of her skirt, so you can't see her waist. And most people back then, everyone, you always tuck in your shirts. Like it's always a thing, and then you always have to put like a belt over it. You shouldn't have any empty belt loops. But she's wearing the sweater on the outside of her skirt, which is why everyone's making fun of not being able to see her figure. But I wasn't even thinking about it until I rewatched this episode that like I have a very similar mustard sweater, and every time I wear it outside my skirt, and I think it's subconsciously my Peggy sweater.
There you
go.
So after she gives him some aspirin and we move on to the next part, Pete grabs Dawn so that they can walk together to the Jewish department store meeting. And Pete Campbell here is, according to Jackie, a gross creep and will continue to be a gross creep for 90% of the show. He just turned 26, and
Don has this great line.
Yes.
I bet the whole world looks like one great big brassiere strap just waiting to be snapped.
Here's an example of Pete being gross and weird and creepy. He turns to Peggy when Peggy walks in, and he's like, "Who is this?" He goes, "Well, you're in the city now. Wouldn't be a sin for you to let us see your legs." And also says, "If you pull your waist in, you might look like a woman." These are just two sentences to show how much of a creep he is. And I like how Peggy doesn't take his crap.
Yeah, she just sort of rolls her eyes and leaves the room.
Yeah. Don, however, makes it clear as they walk that Pete needs to keep his being a huge creep under control, which is very interesting. He basically explains that even if you become successful, if you're too inappropriate or act the wrong way, you'll never truly be successful and will only have company because people take pity on you, basically use you, not love you.
Yeah, he also says that he'll never really get ahead in the business because no one will like him. Like, he has to be likable in the business he's in, which is a good point.
Yeah. I think this says a lot about businessmen and how they acted in the mid-century, or maybe was expected of them. We also meet Rachel Menken, a businesswoman.
Yes, they exist.
So it's really cool. I love this part because Don immediately goes to the man in the scene and has to be like, "Oops, I didn't think the meeting would be with a woman. How scandalous. Sorry."
Yep.
And it turns out that the guy who he went up to thinking that he was the head of the meeting, it was just a guy that
Roger found in the art department.
Yep.
The mailroom.
Gave him a suit and be like, "We need another guy here."
Well, he wanted another Jewish person present for this meeting, and he
Yes.
said he had to go all the way to the mailroom, but he found one. And so
Yes. But the guy's wearing some great mid-century glasses and a very skinny tie, and I thought it was great.
yeah.
So we see a fade transition into the exterior of the building. Not much view of mid-century Manhattan, unfortunately, but Peggy's entering a medical building. She's also seen here reading a very mid-century style pamphlet titled "It's Your Wedding Night," subtitled with "What Every Bride Should Know: How to Be a Good Wife." This is not a real pamphlet. I looked for it. If you listened to last week's episode, this is what inspired our etiquette segment.
Yep.
Peggy's first day in Manhattan, and she wants to get on the pill. Dr. Emerson, the gynecologist, he is smoking, which is, of course. He's also very judgmental, although he says, "I'm not here to judge you," and then proceeds to judge her.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
He's also a huge creep. It's a big creepy episode.
Yes. It's also in the scene that we see a calendar on the wall that gives us a date, March 1960, assuming that the doctor keeps his calendar up to date.
He ends up writing her a prescription for Enovid, which is $11 a month in 1960, which is $118 in today's money.
No clue.
For context, we also find out later that Peggy only makes $300 a week.
Oh, wow.
We don't find that out in today's episode, so that is a big chunk of her paycheck going straight to this pill. So
at the next scene, we're back to the Menkins meeting. The same boardroom, only now they are eating shrimp cocktail and a large pitcher of Bloody Marys on the table, celery and all, because of course you would drink at work.
Yes. Also, I think it's important that it's shrimp cocktail specifically because they don't know anything about the Jewish culture. A lot of people who keep kosher don't eat shrimp. So the fact that they know so little that they're like, oh, we'll put shrimp on the table for the Jewish department store meeting was also silly.
So Miss Mannequin is putting a cigarette on a holder. Women in the 1960s used these cigarette holders for a few reasons, like preventing ash and nicotine from staining their clothing, fingers, and gloves, and also keeping smoke away from eyes and hats. It also is a perceived elegance and fashion statement. And also there's a tabletop cigarette lighter, which I think is hilarious and maybe needs to be part of some future episode, because the history of table lighters is intertwined with the history of lighters in general, with early examples like the Ronson Pistol Lighter and Wonderlight.
Pistol lighter.
Great names for mid-century tools.
Great names.
Don and Roger are pushing coupons and are being pretty prejudiced. Rachel, or Miss Mannequin, says, lets it all roll off her back and sticks to her guns, and Don's a huge baby and storms out. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
After the opening scene with the black waiter, we assume that he was not a bigot, but here he is, not wanting to, quote, let a woman talk to him this way. So we see that he does not really respect women.
Mm-hmm.
Scene 9 is great. It is Joan and Peggy entering the, quote, nerve center of the office. It's a small, crowded room where the switchboard ladies live. And they're all smoking because 1960s. In this scene is another reference to Peggy's legs and how it would be better for her to show them around. Quote, I bet you Don Draper would love it if he could see them.
Women saying this to other women is just...
Yes.
Yeah. So we meet the switchboard ladies who, they're not super important to the plot, but the fact that there is a switchboard is important for both historical context and for future plot points. And you learn that they do things like not letting calls go through when they dislike a secretary. So they're doing like mean girl stuff here in the office.
Yes. But fun facts. Kristen Schaal plays Switchboard Girl in the middle, and she's a well-known actress and comedian who plays one of the main characters in The Last Man on Earth, and also voices Louis Belcher in Bob's Burgers. And another one of the switchboard ladies is Stephanie Courtney. She's sitting in the back and receives the chocolates as a gift. And she will eventually become the famous Flo in the Progressive commercials.
I always forget about that. Yeah, you're right. That is Flo.
Yeah. For the next scene, we're back in the boardroom. Very mid-century decor. The painting in the background is very mid-century. But more importantly, it seems like they are sitting in Eames aluminum group chairs, which were first available in 1958. Now, these retail today on Herman Miller for about $2,700, although these are probably replicas because they are on casters instead of molded gliders. That being said, we had these chairs in our office when I worked in an office.
Wow.
And it's time for the big client meeting. This time it's Lucky Strike. So we meet Lee Garner and Lee Garner Jr. And everyone's smoking. Everyone's smoking and everyone's coughing.
I think it's important to note that they all start coughing when Lee Garner starts coughing to like on purpose to like make it not embarrassing for him that he's coughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee Garner is the owner of Lucky Strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he's played by none other than John Cullum, an actor and singer born in 1930 and very well known for both TV, film, and stage, having won 2 Tonys for Best Actor in Musical. And if you've seen ER, he played Dr. Green's dad. And if you've seen Madam Secretary, he played the senator that did some stuff that I don't want to spoil.
He also was in Northern Exposure, if anyone watched that show, which is really
Yes,
cute.
that's true. So whilst Sterling Cooper, the agency, was invented for the show, maybe most or all of their accounts are real companies.
I have to like fact check this. I'm pretty sure at the very least most of the companies are real companies, but
Yeah.
it might be all of them. I will effort this before our next episode.
Yes.
Or maybe I'll just research them all as they come up. Well, Menken's department store isn't real, but Lucky Strike is,
Yeah.
so maybe never mind. It's 50-50.
Lee Garner says a really great quote. He goes, "Manipulation of the media, that's what I pay you for," which is funny because it's advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the film cannot advertise that cigarettes are safe, which I found to be another timeline error because the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act, which legally banned the advertising of cigarettes and tobacco products in TV and radio, was not signed into law until January 1971. Pete pitches the death wish angle, and it's pretty embarrassing. And Don has a breakthrough when he hears the quote, "If we have this problem, everyone has this problem." And this is very dramatic. It kind of points, I'm thinking, to a future of Don Draper, the genius, or maybe the catch of the show is that he always comes up with a winning campaign. And I'm not looking at Jackie's face right now because I don't want any spoiling.
But yeah, he comes up with the brilliant, "It's toasted." No,
Yes.
other people's cigarettes are poison. Lucky Strike's is toasted. This is why they pay him the big bucks.
So next up, we are back in Don's office to celebrate, and the scene opens up with a close-up shot of Don's now famous Dorothy Trope roly-poly glasses, which
I
are
want
Jackie's...
them so much. I just need to find them in the wild one day. You can get them on eBay, but that seems like cheating. I want to go to like an antique mall and find them. Like, I want them to find me. But
we're also switching here from cigarettes to cigars. Still smoking, but, celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Don confronts Pete about stealing the research that the scary German lady had given him, which he had thrown in the trash. Remember a few minutes ago when I said that? And he goes, "I had a report just like that, and it's not like there's some magic machine that makes identical copies of things."
I mentioned this line during our Xerox episode. It tickles me.
Yes. Peggy here tries to hit on Don because that's kind of the sort of thing that everyone told her she needed to do. Luckily, Don brushes it off, and Peggy's officially friend-zoned.
This is actually exactly what needs to happen because not being fired for doing that right now, embarrassingly, on her first day, and also the fact that she does not have... This is going to cut her off from any future messy romantic entanglements with Don. This will enable her to become arguably the most important character on the show. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But this is a good moment.
We get another Fate transition. This show really likes him. And we are now in Pete's bachelor party, a strip club. Everyone is smoking because of course they are smoking, and they better be Lucky Strikes. A group of girls joins them, and Pete asks where they came from, and one of the guys goes, "They work at the automat." To which another replies, "He just pushed a button and they came out." And I'm pretty sure we mentioned the automat in an episode in the first season. They were like this early fast food restaurants. Basically, the front of house is like a giant wall akin to a vending machine. You put your coins in and open the door you want with the food that you want. And on the other side of the wall, we have the people actually cooking and stuffing or stocking the cabinet with food.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a good idea for a shorty.
Yeah, a short episode on automats would be fun.
Yeah. We get another moment here where it is revealed to the audience that Sal is definitely gay.
Yeah, I should have written that line down, but like, one of the party girls is like, "Oh, I love hanging out here. It's hot and full of men," and Sal's like, "I know what you mean." Like... Anyway, so they're definitely they want the audience to know that he's gay and in the closet. Like, that's definitely a thing.
Yes, and Pete is once again really gross, so much so that the party girls don't want to hang out with him, and actually one gets up and moves to the side of the table.
Yep.
And also, dude, you're getting married. Stop doing what you're doing.
The worst. Pete's the worst.
Another fun fact, one of the admin here, Harry Crane, which we met earlier in the elevator, who also says they are the finest admin in New York City, is played by Rich Sommer, who also played one of Andy's best friends in Devil Wears Prada.
I always forget that he's in that, and when I rewatch The Devil Wears Prada, it's like a surprise every time.
The next scene, we are in some sort of restaurant with some great zebra pattern wallpaper. And Dawn here is trying to patch things up with Rachel.
And she orders a Mai Tai that comes in a tiki mug and is clearly not a Mai Tai. Like, it's basically like a tall tiki mug with what looks like a jungle bird garnish, and that's not... Mai Tais are served in rocks glasses. Like, this is whatever.
Yes. Dawn gets a whiskey neat.
Yes.
And you guessed it, more smoking. The waiter even replaces the ashtray with a new clean one at one point, and Rachel smokes with her holder.
And I wrote this down. Did you get this vibe too, that it's a very flirty meeting?
I did not.
Yes. And so we find out while they're flirting and talking and trying to patch things up, but we find out in a very poetic way, Don delivers this great speech about how he doesn't really believe in love or planning for the future in any way. He says, what you call love was invented by guys like me to sell nylons, which is a very important thing about his character. So we're getting a lot of character development here already.
Yes. The next scene, which we're almost at the end here, so the show's winding down, or the episode's winding down, and we see Peggy's apartment, or really the hallway outside Peggy's apartment, and her roommate, Marjorie, opens the door. And what happens here is that Pete showed up at Peggy's, drunk and feeling sorry for himself. And Jackie wrote down, does Pete like her, or does she want to be the first one with a new girl? And then wrote down, does Peggy like him? Or is she just doing what she thinks is expected of secretaries on Madison Avenue? And I think it's the latter. I do not think she's got any interest in him as a first-time watcher watching this episode.
Interesting.
I think she just does what she does because that she spent her first day being told that she needs to pretty much be flirtatious and say yes,
right.
Or not say no. I also don't think she would sleep with an engaged man if she wasn't in the position she was in. And again, Pete, what are you doing? You're getting married?
Right. So gross. Pete's the worst. Anyway.
So here we get the closing scene. And there is a really great musical scene change with Dawn in a train heading home to Ossining, which is a village in Westchester County, New York. And it is famous for being the location of Sing Sing Correctional Facility.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes, as well as known for having a very diverse architectural style, ranging from Gothic to Victorian to Colonial Revival. Dawn here likely took the New York Central Railroad, more specifically the Hudson Line, sometimes known as the water level line because it followed the Hudson at level. And Dawn would have taken the train at Grand Central Station. Madison Avenue, for reference, is a short walk from the station. If you exit on 42nd Street and you make a right and you walk to the city blocks, you get to Madison Avenue. Now, I don't know where his building would be on Madison, but, walking distance. In Ossining, he likely drove to the station because Don Draper is a suburban guy.
Which we just find out right now.
Yes, right now. Also, at the Ossining station, as he walks from the train to the car, we see a set of chairs that look remarkably like the Eames molded plastic chair. And they might have been because, remember from our episode, they were very popular at the time in public spaces because they could blend in very well. So there's a good chance they are. So good attention to detail, people.
Mm-hmm. The set decorators did a great job.
Yes. Don in the prop master too, except for that one thing I said earlier. Don is driving a 1959 Oldsmobile Rocket 88. Now, this is a newly redesigned version of one of Oldsmobile's most profitable cars. This actually its fourth generation. And it shared a platform with Buick and Cadillac. So this car is likely an entry-level executive car. So Don Draper is more than entry-level, but he's still not top management. If he did, he'd probably be driving a Cadillac.
I love that you noticed that. That's a very interesting insight. And they probably thought of that too. We have to give him exactly what his job would be paying for salary-wise.
Yeah, and really, I don't think that his position would have driven that car. I think the position he probably had before would have put him in that bracket of that type of car. But as we find out in a little bit, why he didn't upgrade is because we get the big reveal. Don is married with children. Who is this guy? I was surprised. So stay tuned to find out who this guy really is. I did put down that his wife assumed that he was staying in the city again. So the question here is does he do this often? Is she okay with him staying in the city, presumably sleeping around as with his type of person in that point? Or is she he's just staying late at the office. He's being faithful. Right. Is she okay with it? Does she know it's happening? Does he know she knows it's happening? That he knows that she knows it's happening?
I love, you realized again, when we were going over the Midge section, wait a minute, he definitely slept with Midge. And that was and he spent the night too, they wake up the next morning together.
Yeah.
So when his wife says, "Oh, I thought you were staying in the city again," there's a plate for him in the oven. She made him dinner and was waiting but also knew that there was a chance he wasn't even going to come home. So that is episode 1. What do you think? Did you love it?
I loved it. I think it's very interesting. I love the attention to detail, as you can tell from what I talked about in the
Yeah,
episode.
I was so impressed. Like, I thought I was taking notes, but this is like, you were really taking notes. So I hope that you were still able to enjoy it. And I do actually think every episode just gets better from here.
Uh-huh.
It's like, as far as pilots go, pilots are usually not the best episode of any TV show.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, they're new, they're trying things out, and they cover a lot of characters and a lot of situations. Like, they pack a lot into this episode, but I think they do it in a really smooth way. Other than the like Sal is gay obvious nonsense lines, like most of it isn't like they're not hand holding the audience in any way. They're
Yeah.
just kind of letting you discover stuff as it's
Yeah. No,
relevant to the plot. But
I really liked it.
good. And you're committed to season 1 and excited about it?
I'm committed to season 1 and excited about it. I'm excited to see the mid-century through the eyes of this show, because there's just so many, like, and I don't know, maybe if I'm watching it from like just me history person or me mid-century podcast host, like through the eyes of that, because as I was watching, it's like, oh, that's definitely mid-century, and that of course I would be there. So I'm looking forward to like finding potential topics in these episodes.
Yeah, it'll be an endless source of inspiration.
Yeah.
It is for me, and I'm sure it will be for you also.
Yeah.
Yay! I'm so glad you loved it.
So that was episode 1 of Mad Men.
Yay! We're actually going to skip our etiquette segment for this episode because we ran a little long with our recap. So, since we're now missing a segment at the end instead of etiquette, Gonzalo, who was your favorite character so far?
Oh man, I don't know.
I'd be so embarrassed if you said, "Oh, I really love Pete," and I was just like trashing him the whole time.
No. I think Pete is definitely the person that Pete is, if that makes sense. Like, it's very apt for that level of person in an office at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know who my favorite character is. I like them all, and I don't feel like I know them well enough yet. I kind of like the switchboard ladies.
Yeah, they are fun.
Yeah. I
Also
feel like they're
great.
gonna be delightful little like nuggets of mid-century.
Yeah, they are. They are delightful nuggets. I think I already mentioned it earlier, but Joan is my favorite character. That might be why I was defending her so much. I think she's fascinating. She's so pretty, and she knows that she's so pretty, and she spent most of her life being so pretty, and she uses it like armor. But underneath all that, she's also really, really smart and really good at business, and she runs this office. She has been there for years. She is good at her job, and she learns over the course of the show that she like really loves to work. Like, she's got a very good business drive.
I was gonna say, I think she sounds like the kind of, or that's just to me in this first episode, the kind of person that would probably, yes, would fall into the like, okay, if I act a certain way or flirt a certain way, and if they ask me to spend the weekend with them, I'm gonna do it. But she's not doing it necessarily to advance her career. I feel like she does that on her own merit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, like she's not. Yeah,
she doesn't need that. It's just like, okay, so this is part of my job. Part of my job is to be flirty, and part of my job is to spend the weekend at the country. That's not what's going to get her satisfaction at the end of the day, though.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to watch. I think she's a very good example of like how women were raised to believe their point in life. Like, she's got a little bit of that old-fashioned idea, like being raised to be beautiful, versus the new generation of women in the workplace who actually just want to work. Like, they're not working to get husbands, they're working because they love working. And she sort of realizes as the 60s progressed, like, that's an option. Like, you can just want to work because you like working. Like, it's just an interesting, I think she's great. I really love Joan.
Yeah.
So she's
anyway,
but we'll catch up with your favorite characters every episode and see if anyone sticks out to you as you get to know everybody. But yeah, we did meet a lot of characters in this episode.
Yes. Well, with that, it looks like we have finally landed the big account. Right? Thank you all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at MCL Podcast. Instagram is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions, so send us a DM anytime. And you can also contact us through our Send Us a Text Message feature in the show notes.
Yeah, so send us some fan mail. Thanks, guys, for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.